Hi, this is the Daily Overpass. My name is Eric and I make apps. Now today I want to show you how I hire people in the Philippines. Okay, so I hope you all had a great weekend. It's been a fantastic weather here in England this weekend and it's been really nice, but it's also really nice just to get back to work, get back into the thick of things, right? So today what I want to do is talk to you about something which I think is really cool, and if you do run a business, I think it might really help your business, and if you're going to run a business one day, you'll find this really useful too. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some of the websites that I use to find, to build my team. So where do I find talented people? Where do I find the best prices and all that kind of stuff? So I think you'll find it really interesting. But first, I want to tell you a story because I like to tell stories. So if you want to see the nitty gritty, fast forward to the end. But let me just actually no, don't fast forward to the end. Stick with me here. This makes sense. I want to tell you about a contract I was working. It was about 11 or 12 years ago. God, I can't believe it was so long ago, right? And it was I was working for a consultancy, and we were working for like this huge investment bank, right? So and I had, so this was this contract, I think I was making about $310 a day, about 310 pounds a day, right? Which might sound like a lot to you or a little to you. It was actually kind of low for me at the time, right? So for my contract, for my daily rate, right? And the only reason I was at 310 was because I negotiated up when we talked about it. And the guy who got me the job, who was like, he is a way better developer than I am. He still is. He's like the most talented developer I have ever known, right? And he's the one who contacted me. They were looking for developers, so he contacted me, and I went and I was being paid 10 pounds more a day than he was, and for like probably the only time ever in my life. So it was kind of cool, right? So it's like coffee's on me or whatever. So, but we were working for this big investment bank, and sometimes we'd work in this consultancy office, but most of the time we worked on site at the investment bank. No big deal. So, and it was fine. I mean, the consultancy didn't really have a lot to do with it. I kind of knew who the managers were, but never really worked for them. I mean, I sent them my invoices and stuff like that. And then, one day, I think I worked there about 3 or 4 months, but one day I found out how much our markup was, because if you're hired through a consultancy, there's going to be a markup to the other company. So they're either going to pay based on project, or they're going to be paid based on the day or whatever. So there was a markup, which I kind of figured there would be. I mean, that's the way the game is played. So I figured my markup would probably be like 400, 500 a day, something like that. And then one day I found out what it was. Where it was like they were charging me out at 800 pounds a day. They were charging us developers out at 800 pounds a day, and we were making 300 pounds a day. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe the scale of this, right? Because I thought, wow, this, and you think, well, the consultancy, they had lots of overhead, they had to have an office, and they had to walk around with coffee, and they had to schmooze and all that kind of stuff. I don't know what they did, but apparently it was important. And but we were the skill, we were the product. So, and I was really surprised about that, right? So, but I guess that's just the way it is, So if you do work for somebody else, there's always a markup on how much you make, right? So, fast forward a few years later, I went to China. So I wanted to be, I thought enough contracting. I'm going to get to Overpass, right? And I worked with developers in India, worked with developers in Poland, but I speak Chinese, and I wanted to go to China, and I wanted to work with Chinese software companies. I thought that would be it. We'll just strike up a partnership and all this kind of stuff. So I arranged like 10 different meetings with software companies in Shanghai and Dalian, right? So I went on this business trip, just Overpass, just me, right? So I went out there in the suit and everything and met with all these big software companies. Some of the software companies were really small, right? They were just like a couple guys in this like, dingy little office and everything like that, which was great, right? And then, but some of them were like huge. They were like huge buildings, brand new glass buildings, like, just, really impressive. And you go down there and you think, wow, and then rows and rows and rows of developers coding away at desks and everything like that. And they give you a big tour, right? So like, and I'm thinking, wow, this is, so they're showing me around this big offices, and here's our meeting rooms, and here's our other meeting rooms, and here's the third meeting room in case the other two get booked and all that kind of stuff. And, and I met with the senior managers and spoke Chinese with them, and they were just like, everybody was afraid of them, and I'm sitting across from them just trying to look like I have this big company, right? So it's just like me, and I tell you what, I've never felt like a bigger fraud in all my life, right? But they showed me these offices, and the more extravagant their offices were, the only thing I could see was overhead, right? I was thinking about that contract I worked at. You know, it was like, what I wanted was the skills of the developers. I wanted talented people, and you know, they were giving me talented people, but they were trying to impress me with overhead. They were trying to impress me with big offices and you know, and nice industrial parks and everything like that. And I just, you know, I was more impressed with the smaller companies. You know, because I was thinking, if I'm going to be paying for it, I want to pay for what I need to pay for. All right. A few years later, right, last part of this story. So I'm working with an Indian company, right? So we're doing apps, right? And I have a dedicated Indian company. And you probably hear from some companies like this. It's going to be your own dedicated team, but they're part of our company, but they work for you. So I was working with, I think I had like 7 developers, right? So, you know, making sure they read the right things, their skills went up. And I tell you what, it'd be like 1 or 2 months they'd raise the rate on these guys. But I was paying like really low. I think I was paying around $7 an hour for these developers, right? Which is low, right? I think you'll agree that it's low. And then, you know, so usually when you talk to offshore firms, at least when I do, usually it's around $25 an hour. You know, for a senior developer, $25 an hour, maybe a little bit less for less skilled, but generally that's what it is. So I was on, like, so occasionally somebody would leave that company, right? And they would get in touch with me on Skype saying, you know, Eric, I left that company, but I need work. Can you hire me? And then I think, well, I don't know, you know, because, you know, I don't know if I really want to. And then they would tell me that so I was paying $7 an hour and they were making $2, right? So, and I thought, wow, right? It was like the same thing as that consultancy, right? There was this big markup. I was paying for the markup. I was paying for the managers. I was paying for the building. I was paying for all that kind of stuff, which has its value. It has its value when you don't have to worry about, you know, the management. Are people showing up and are they working and all that kind of stuff. But I'm still more concerned with that kind of stuff, right? So the reason that I'm telling you this is because I'm going to show you this website. You can see, you know, what kind of rates and stuff there are. And I like to go direct to the developer and and skip all of that markup. But I don't want you to think that I'm cheap, right? So I'm more concerned with paying for talented people and the talents of others than I am for paying with offices and all the other, you know, bells and whistles that people add. Now you might disagree with this, and I know, you know, I've had lots of arguments with people. I've had people say to me, Eric and his sweatshops, which I can tell you that that's not the case. You know, I have really good people working on my teams. But yeah, so let me show you this website here real quick. But first, this is more for hiring freelancers. Most of the time, if it's like a small project, like some translation or like a one-off, you know, WordPress thing, and I don't need that skill full time or even part time, then I would just go on Odesk or well, Elance when it was there, Odesk or Freelancer.com or whatever one of those ones are. My preference is Odesk, and I'll just hire somebody on a project-based work. But when I need somebody long-term, then I'll go to this website. So let me just show you this website here real quick. Okay, so here's the site. It's called onlinejobs.ph, right? And it's like this big database of people, you know, they put their CVs on here, people who want to work from home from the Philippines. So we're talking about freelancers who are working at home using their own computers, and they want to get away from the office life and work, you know, from their own home, from their own computers, using their own internet connection, right? So let me just give you a little warning here. I've been cheated on this site before, right? So because it's not the site itself, it's the people. So you're going direct to people. You're not going through a company. You're not going through a recruitment agency. You're just going to try to find, you know, people directly. So in the past, I have found people who, you know, they work more than one job. So sometimes I would hire them full time, and they would have like 4 other full-time jobs, right? You can't even fit 4 8-hour shifts in a day, right? So, or they would work 3 full-time jobs, which was not possible unless they don't ever sleep, right? So this was something that was, you know, that happens from time to time. Because it's the Philippines, you have trouble with internet connections, right? So internet might not be so reliable. There's typhoons, there's power outages all the time, that kind of stuff. Personally, I've hired somebody on a full-time basis, and they seemed okay, right? They were kind of had a little bit of experience, so I trained them up on Corona. Couldn't find anybody for Corona SDK. I trained them up, put them on like I think 2 months of training, and then then later on I went to go find a Corona developer, and then there was 4 people listed, right? So, and then I looked at them all, and they were all this one guy with different variations on his name, right? So, which is, this kind of stuff happens. So I'm telling you this so that if you have any trouble here, don't come and blaming me. You might think it's not worth it, which is cool, It might not be worth it for you, but let me show you this site. So basically what you can do is you can go in here and you can post jobs, or you can just search for people. And it says, used by Google, used by different places, and there's little stuff here. Now the site costs the site costs $50 a month. I have a lifetime membership, so I got that a few years ago, which seemed to really work out for me. So here you could type in, so let's say if I type in WordPress as a skill here, because there's so many WordPress developers in the world, right? Someday I think, for those of you developers out there, if you're thinking about going into WordPress or something just because there's lots of jobs available, I would say that the more people going into a specific field means the less that you could charge for it. So when it comes to actually marketing yourself, sometimes it's riskier to go for a niche, but it also pays a lot more to go for a niche. So, okay, so here we got WordPress. So I type in WordPress, I've got a few people, virtual assistant. So this person making between 15,000 to 20,000 PHP Philippine pesos per month, which is about $300 to $400 per month for 40 hours. An hour. So 189 to 252 an hour. This person over here, a bit more experienced, $700 to $800 an hour. Sorry, a month, and so forth. So there's lots of people in here. You could go in. Now I'm not logged in, so I logged out just because because I was going to be showing this to you. So this is what you would see if you go onto the site. Now, if you log in, you actually see names and a bit of contact information, and you could contact them directly. So this is one of the things. This is not like a service like Odesk where you pay through Odesk and it goes into escrow and all that kind of stuff. This is the kind of service where you establish a relationship and the website has nothing to do with you. This is why it's easy to get conned and scammed and all that kind of stuff, but it's also easy to find people because you don't have the overhead of administration fees of somebody else. So you can pay them by PayPal or whatever type of thing. And what you want to do is hire them as a freelancer and not as an employee, because you have lots of other different types of overhead as employee too, and they have lots of different tax obligations and stuff like that. So so let's say if I go in here and I type in Ionic. Now Ionic's a bit more of a specialized skill, so not many people have that, at least not on this platform. So I go in here and I see senior developer, $1,000 a month. Senior web developer, $600 to $700 a month. And of course you could go in here and I can see his skills. If I sign in, I can see a bit more information. And they all got these little CVs and self-evaluated, stuff like that. I mean, it's kind of thing where you go in there and have a look around, and you might be able to find somebody who's good. Now, personally, I think you have to hire a lot of bad people before you find a good one. So it's a learning curve. So always hire slow and fire fast. Somebody in the comments said this once. Fire fast. So this is, I was the kind of person who I think, maybe they'll come around, maybe a little bit better later. But it's just if it's not working out early on, just let them go. I mean, because it's better for them if they could go find something else, whatever. So so that's how that works. Now you might think that me having shown you this, that I'm just very, very cheap, which maybe I am, right? But if it comes to, like, if I need to hire a brain surgeon, I will hire a brain surgeon, right? If I need to hire somebody to give me a Band-Aid, I'm going to hire somebody to give me a Band-Aid, but I'm not going to pay the person to give me a Band-Aid the same as I would pay the brain surgeon. I'm not going to pay the brain surgeon the same as I would hire somebody to give me a Band-Aid, right? There's different varying levels of skills, and you don't always need senior developer. I mean, it'll make your life easier if you have somebody who's top shelf and you need him to do a login form or something like that. He would be able to do it much quicker than somebody who was a junior developer, but it would also cost a lot more to begin with. So anyway, I'm showing you this now, and I hope it doesn't make you think any less of me. This is kind of, you know, one of the things that we do going forward. And people are always saying, why don't you just hire somebody locally? You know, basically because there's some tasks that I need that is, you know, I need somebody who's dependable and doesn't necessarily need to be on site. And sometimes I do need somebody to be on site. I mean, you know, I need somebody to help me go to meetings and stuff like that. So anyway, I hope this has been useful. You know, I hope this, you know, if you are setting up a company, this might be something you might want to look into. So anyway, that's it for today. I will talk to you guys tomorrow.